better. Visit aarp.org/AAPI.
DTE's natural gas is a lot more than just an energy source. It perks up your mornings and eases you into relaxed evenings. It works both hard and smart. It can help heal the body and transport the mind. And at the end of the day, cleaner, safe, affordable natural gas is there to do more than just dry your clothes. It's a warm hug waiting to happen. DTE.
Asian Americans know sacrifice, honor, and courage. They are teachers, untapping potential at whatever age. They're the social workers to count on, who lend courage to help make tough decisions. They are the caregivers or advocates who empower others to live meaningful lives. They're your neighbor, your colleague, your friend, the familiar face you see every day. They are the heroes whose unflinching purpose is making lives and communities better. Visit aarp.org/AAPI.
DTE's natural gas is a lot more than just an energy source. It perks up your mornings and eases you into relaxed evenings. It works both hard and smart. It can help heal the body and transport the mind. And at the end of the day, cleaner, safe, affordable natural gas is there to do more than just dry your clothes. It's a warm hug waiting to happen. DTE.
Asian Americans know sacrifice, honor, and courage. They are teachers, untapping potential at whatever age. They're the social workers to count on, who lend courage to help make tough decisions. They are the caregivers or advocates who empower others to live meaningful lives. They're your neighbor, your colleague, your friend, the familiar face you see every day. They are the heroes whose unflinching purpose is making lives and communities better. Visit aarp.org/AAPI.
DTE's
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 49th Anniversary Celebration Gala of the Association of Chinese Americans. My name is Ian Shin. I am proud to be a member of the Board of Directors of ACA, and I will be your MC for this event. We are so grateful that you've chosen to spend your afternoon with us and also for your support of ACA throughout the year. Today, we'll have a chance to hear from some honored guests and community partners to reflect on ACA's work from this past year, and of course, to hear from the talented filmmakers behind Far East, Deep South, a new and important documentary movie about the Chinese American experience that many of you have watched for this gala. Before we begin, I invite you to join me in listening to the national anthem, which will be presented by members of the ACA's Teen Volunteer Council.
What's Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our very special 49th anniversary celebration virtual gala. I hope you all get a chance to view the Far East Deep South screening yesterday. I'm sincerely grateful for so many of you, our great sponsors, and who have worked alongside us for many years here to support our event today. I also like to thank each one of our guests and friends for taking the time to join us on a Saturday afternoon. If I can have a moment to introduce you to the Board of Directors of ACA, that would be great. And I'd like to thank all my colleagues for working with me for the past 3 years. Thank you for your dedicated service and your leadership. As the president of ACA, I'm proud of our success over the past year, particularly our efforts and collaboration with our national partners to include APA history in education curriculums and to combat hate against the APA community. We have achieved remarkable milestones in enhancing our own ability to serve at a professional level, while providing more opportunities for meaningful engagement for our community members. COVID-19 has never stopped us from introducing innovative programs and providing the much needed services to our community. Michigan is still confronting a rapid increase in COVID-19 cases. We at ACA are grateful for all the financial resources we received and the contribution of our dedicated board, staff members, and volunteers who have continued to work tirelessly and selflessly to keep our organization moving forward amid this crisis. In the year ahead, we will continue ACA's commitment and the great legacy in serving our community. Thank you for coming and enjoy the program.
Thank you very much, Shenlin. We are grateful for the support of many local officials and community partners, and we're privileged to hear from some of them today. First, I would like to welcome to our virtual stage Senator Stephanie Chang, who represents the 1st District in the Michigan State Senate, which covers Wayne County. Senator Chang?
Thank you so much, Ian. And hi, everyone. Hope everyone is having a good weekend so far. Again, my name is Stephanie Chang. I am the state senator for Senate District 1 here in Michigan, which currently includes Detroit and Downriver. And I just love the work that ACA does. I'm proud to be a former board member, but really it's been an honor to work alongside ACA to be able to help the Asian American community through a really challenging couple of years, both with COVID, the virus itself, as well as much of the hate and discrimination that has been happening in our community. But I feel very much that there is a huge increase in Asian Americans and Chinese Americans speaking up and raising our voices, including ACA. So just very grateful for your leadership, as well as all of the amazing services that you provide to the Chinese American community here in Detroit, but also throughout the Metro Detroit region. So thank you for having me. Keep up the amazing work, and congratulations on another successful year.
Thank you so much, Senator Chang. Next, we have the pleasure to hear a message from Nellie J.L. Lee, who is Assistant Corporation Counsel for Wayne County, who will be speaking on behalf of Wayne County Executive Warren Evans.
Thank you, President Chen and the Board of Directors for including Wayne County in your celebration today. Congratulations on the immeasurable difference that you have made in the community for the past 49 years. My name is Nellie Lee, and I'm honored to speak with you on behalf of Wayne County Executive Warren Evans. Developing the right programs to target community needs is key, and Wayne County is fortunate to have a partner in the ACA in doing so when providing the PPE, supplies, and food assistance. On a personal note, I have family and friends who have utilized the ACA English language instruction. Additionally, I was a proud recipient of a high school graduate scholarship many, many years ago. And most recently, my children participated in the Youth Cultural Summer Camp and had a great time. The Wayne County Executive maintains his commitment to ensuring that communities' needs are met, especially during these uncertain times. We are proud to have been able to assist the ACA in supporting its community. Again, congratulations on your 49th anniversary, and we're looking forward to many, many more years and successes. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee, and thank you very much, Executive Evans. Next, we will hear a message from Mayor Ethan Baker from the City of Troy. Mayor Baker?
Hi there, I'm Mayor Ethan Baker from the City of Troy, and I couldn't be happier to be here with you today celebrating the American Chinese Association of Michigan on their 49th anniversary, and this gala is a wonderful annual event. So happy to be here. Really 5 decades of service to the communities throughout our region and our state. I know very firsthand what makes a great city is having a great community partner, and the ACA is absolutely that. The ACA was there for us when we needed help with supplies during the early stages of the pandemic. They're always out doing good in our community, and that's what makes a strong and great city. So I couldn't be happier to be here to celebrate you, and thank you for all your wonderful help and celebrate the successes you have. We know next year's a big 50-year anniversary. I love your theme of passing the torch, remembering our history and reimagining the future. We always have to be forward thinking, but looking back on our history is what made us who we are. We have to take both into account. So again, thankful to have the ACA as our wonderful community partners. So thankful to have them make Troy a safer and better place for all to feel and call home. Again, I'm Mayor Ethan Baker. Thank you so much for having me today. Wish you well.
Thank you so much to Mayor Baker. Next, we have a brief message from Canton Township Supervisor Anne-Marie Graham-Hudak.
Hi, my name's Anne-Marie Graham-Hudak, Canton Township Supervisor, and I'd like to say congratulations to the Association of Chinese Americans on their 49th anniversary and all that they've done for our communities.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Graham-Hudak. We will next hear from Judge Brian Hartwell of the 43rd District Court representing Hazel Park, Ferndale, and Madison Heights. And we're so glad, Judge Hartwell, that you're with us today. Judge Hartwell?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Congratulations to the ACA on celebrating 49 years. As the former mayor of Madison Heights, the home of the Chinese Community Center, and the current judge for Madison Heights, Hazel Park, and Ferndale, my wife Ling Yu and I can attest to the deep impact of ACA in our community. You were the first to respond to the pandemic's early shutdown by delivering goods and food to the elderly. The ACA supplied medical equipment and food to our first responders. And the ACA leadership spoke with clear and a strong voice to address racism and discrimination. And the members of the ACA deliver for our children, seniors, and our neighbors. And I know with the ACA, we are healthier, connected to information and resources, connected to each other, and hopefully more prosperous. And the ACA is as essential today as it's ever been. And so as always, my wife Ling Yu and I pledge to support you today, every event, the good times and the bad times. And I know there will be so many more good times. Here's to another 49 years. Happy anniversary to the ACA. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judge Hartwell. It's so lovely to have all of these supporters at the state, county, and municipal levels with us today. Next, we have the pleasure of hearing from some of our program sponsors for today. And first, I would like to introduce Mr. Eric Doe, who is CEO of Wayne County Integrated Health Network. Mr. Doe?
Thank you so much, Ian. Thank you to Ms. Chen, to Peggy, and the outstanding folks, obviously, of the ACA. It is with great pleasure that I get an opportunity to just speak in terms of our partnership, and the judge and others have said it well. Your mark as to how and who you are to a community truly shows itself when you have those times of challenges and difficulties. And if COVID hasn't taught us anything, it has taught us certainly to come together. And, whether it's the fine work that you've been doing with reading programs, whether it's the fine work that you've been doing with seniors, getting folks vaccinated, getting, folks tested, our first responders, all of the work that you've done certainly has not gone unnoticed. We here at Detroit Wing, we value that partnership that we have, and we certainly are looking forward to many more years of that partnership to come. I mean, just think about it. 49 years, imagine all the things that have happened in 49 years. What you can do nowadays with just a cell phone are things that we couldn't do even 5 years ago. So how extraordinary is that? But even in the midst of all of these technological advances, Ms. Chen, what you and your organization has proven is that touch, that ability to reach people, that ability to connect with people has remained true. So with all of the great advancement, with all of the technological, nuances, you have still proven that touching people and reaching people is where it matters. So from our Mind Board and our staff to you, please continue the good work. And I will always be here for any assistance that you need. So to Peggy and Ian and all of the folks, thank you so much. And we're looking forward to 49 more years.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Mr. Doe. We appreciate your support. Next, we will hear from Mr. Ronald Taylor, who is CEO of the Detroit Area Agency on Aging 1A. Mr. Taylor?
Yes, I'd just like to say congratulations to the Association for Chinese Americans. And it is a huge feat to have been to what I'll say is to establish your roots and your anchors in the community for 49 years and to be a viable partner and a viable resource. And for that, you all are to be congratulated. And we're especially appreciative as far as your efforts and the work in regards to serving seniors, especially as far as nutrition and the caregiving and the work that evolves around that. You all have been enriching the experiences of what I would say Asian Pacific and Americans in the Metro Detroit area for quite a while. And we at the Detroit Area Agency on Aging, we're just very grateful to have the Association of Chinese Americans as a partner in serving older adults and adults with disabilities. So we just want to say thank you for all that you do to serve the community. And we at the Detroit Area Agency on Aging, we truly look forward to continuing to build upon our strong and lasting connections with the ACA as we work to improve the lives of the people we serve. So again, from the Detroit Area Agency on Aging, we'd like to say congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We love working with your organization and we appreciate your support. Finally, we have the pleasure of hearing from Dr. Tzu-Ying Wu, who is director of the Healthy Asian Americans Project, as well as the Center for Health Disparities, Innovation, and Studies at Eastern Michigan University. Dr. Wu.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure. Oh my God, 49 years of accomplishment, dedication, and commitment. Congratulations, ACA. So the work that we are doing together since actually started in 2006 when we first worked together as a first health screening event. And 15 years later, our collaboration just grows stronger and stronger. Thank you, ACA dedicated team, under the leadership of Shinling, Peggy, and board members. Also greatly appreciate all the community members, volunteers for involving, engaging of our activities. And like previous speakers said that ACA did beautiful job transitions and pivot the challenges during the COVID pandemic. So earlier that we worked together this year on the COVID initial doses, where we worked together to give people the opportunity to receive the vaccination, COVID vaccination. And later this fall, we successfully did a beautiful booster vaccination where more than almost 100 people get the booster shots. We also did the telehealth together, where it's a very unique services that our faculty, I'm the professor in School of Nursing at EMU, my colleague provide the telehealth where the Chinese seniors members cannot go to the services, when they don't feel comfortable, we were able to provide a telehealth. It's also a very unique component because when you go to see the doctor, usually it's patient and doctor. But in this telehealth, we actually have a tryout model where the ACA staff serve as navigator during the telehealth session, advocate for the Chinese patients. And then we had a very successful first Chinese diabetes prevention program sponsored by Beaumont that this year they completed. And this also has particular meaning because when you think about passing the torch, this actually going to be a standing programs that Beaumont is going to take on. And we actually receive a confirmation that Beaumont will be doing another Chinese DPP next year in 2022. So we still have so much to work together. And one of the very exciting programs that we will be doing is chronic disease self-management program. Now we have 2 coaches and are able, equipped to conduct this very important program in 2022. Again, congratulations. And I and my team, we are looking forward to collaborate with ACA for many, many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wu, and thank you again to all of our elected officials and our community partners and program sponsors for their generous support of ACA this year. I'd now like to recognize ACA's annual sponsors, as well as the sponsors for today's program. And I'll just say a few words to recognize them. ACA is really proud to have the support of Comcast and Comerica Bank as our bronze annual sponsors. Please thank them for their support of ACA. Next, I'd like to acknowledge the Emerald event sponsors for today's gala ceremony, including AARP, DTE, and the Detroit Area Agency on Aging. Thank you so much for your support. I'd also like to thank several donors who made today's gala possible. And these individuals are Pat Lukasik, ZC, Wally Lee, Gerald Smith, and Chin Zhao. Thank you for your support. And then finally, let me recognize the ACA's program partners, without whose assistance our work simply would not have been possible this year. They are the Arab Community Center for Economic and Social Services, Beaumont Health System, Comcast Foundation, the Community Foundation of Southeast Michigan, Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network, the Detroit Area Agency on Aging, Eastern Michigan University Center for Health Disparities, Innovation and Studies, My Family Services, Michigan Health Endowment Fund, and the National Coalition for Asian Pacific American Community Development. Again, thank you to all of our bronze annual sponsors, our Emerald event sponsors, our individual donors, and our program partners. You make ACA wonderful. Now, I would like to introduce Peggy Du, who is Executive Director of the Association of Chinese Americans, who will provide a report on ACA's activities in 2021. Peggy?
Thank you, Ian. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Peggy Du, the Interim Executive Director of ACA. I'm so delighted to have invited all our VIPs, program sponsors, and community friends to join us for the great support and celebrate our virtual 49th anniversary gala this afternoon. It is my honor to present ACA annual program report. I'm going to start with 3 great pieces of news to share with you. First, in March, ACA achieved national accreditation through the New York-based Council on Accreditation, COA. We pursue accreditation to demonstrate the implementation of best practice standards in the fields of human services. With the COA accreditation, ACA hopes to provide further to the community and see this as a good milestone. Second, among over 50 chapters of the ACA, Asian Pacific American Advocates, ACA was honored to receive 4 Chapter Excellence Awards presented in the 2021 ACA National Conventions. We are the national 2nd place for program and projects, national 3rd place for community building, national third place for Project of the Year, and our ACA member Gracia Lee was recognized as the unsung hero. Third, we are happy to announce that ACA's 3 service centers have all reopened to public now. Our services cover Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, and Washtenaw counties. We offer many year-round services to Chinese and Asian Pacific American in the region through our 3 service locations. For nearly half a century, ACA has promoted the general welfare of Chinese Americans and the APA community by supporting the education, training, and leadership development of youth and adults, improving their health and quality of life, advancing public appreciation of Chinese culture, and advocating for a just and equitable society. During this second year of fighting with the pandemic, even though it's still challenging, ACA took the responsibility to continue serve our community by delivering programs within advocacy, art and culture, leadership and professional, community involvement, education development, preventive health, and our daily social services and our library work. Together, we serve a total of 2,691 clients, unduplicated clients, through our services and programs, with the youngest participants of only 5 years old from our virtual reading program to the oldest participants of 89 years old attending our adults online classes. Asian Americans have long played a vital and complex role in the American history. While we recognize the achievements of AAPIs, we also know there are many hidden needs within the community, including education and language access, food security, housing, and domestic violence. Given those impacts the pandemic continues to have on the AAPI community, from the spike in hate crimes to increased economic struggles, to the growing physical and mental health concerns, the need to be seen, heard, united, and empowered is more urgent than ever. As a community, nonprofit, and direct service provider, ACA is committed to serving the local community and prioritize caring for those in need. We arranged 5 rounds of care packages delivered to Ann Arbor, Canton, Westland, Farmington Hills, Detroit, Grosse Pointe, Hamtramck, Warren, Macomb, Troy, and Madison Heights to those home-bonded seniors and low-income families. Totally, we delivered 1,209 packages. And since the beginning of this year, we hosted 7 vaccination mobile clinics at our Chinese Community Center, and we provided all services to over 840 individuals to help people get vaccinated. During this time of uncertainty, there is hope by coming together and overcoming, as over the past year, the entire world has been coming together to stand up, help out, give back, and heal. We cannot do this without you, our board of directors, our dedicated staff members. We spare no efforts to provide service in person and virtually to the community. Thank you for our donors and volunteers and the support from our local community partners and governments. Together, we made these events and service possible. Thank you so much, everyone. Now, please enjoy our annual program video.
我们仅代表美华全体朗诵学员向大家拜个年，祝大家
身体健康，万事如意，
牛年幸福安康。
恭喜新春，春节快乐！
我们向大家拜年啦！
我们仅代表美华歌唱班向大家拜年啦！
祝幸福安康，
万事如意，
牛年快乐，
恭喜发财，
新年快乐，
牛年快乐，
牛年快乐！
亲爱的朋友们，大家晚上好或早上好，欢迎大家来参加密西根美华协会2021中秋联欢晚会。阴晴圆缺盼团圆，美华中秋圆心愿，呼朋唤友来相聚，天涯海角诉亲情。
Welcome, everyone. Today is Juneteenth and the anniversary to the day of the beating of Vincent Chin 39 years ago.
One book, one world.
Weiqi is originated from ancient China, and legend says the king of ancient China, Yao, and he invented this game to teach his son to be the leader of their country.
Thank you very much, Peggy, for your report. I want to just take a second to say, on a personal note, what it's meant to me to serve and to join the board of directors for ACA this year. I am actually a relatively new transplant to Michigan. I moved to the state in 2018 in order to take a job at the University of Michigan, where I teach as an assistant professor of US history and Asian American studies. And in the middle of the pandemic, what I realized was that I wanted to have a greater impact in the community. Aside from all the things we talked about in the classroom, what could I do to help create change? And I was fortunate to be approached by Shenlin and some of her colleagues to join the board of ACA. And it really became real to me, the value of ACA, not only in watching this beautiful video of all the things that ACA has done in the past year, but specifically when I joined our Mid-Autumn Festival program earlier this fall. I was there mostly lost in a sea of Mandarin. I am a native Hong Konger, so I don't speak Mandarin very well, but I watched as almost 200 seniors in the area enjoyed a beautiful and vibrant cultural program. And it made me remember my grandparents who came to the United States in the 1970s and 1980s, and who I think very much felt alone. Even though they lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, they didn't have a lot of connections with others who shared their background. And to watch the Mid-Autumn Festival, to see all of these members and guests of ACA enjoying a cultural program and feeling connected to each other at a time when we've all spent so much time apart, it really made me believe and remember just how important ACA's work is. So thank you so much, Peggy, for you and the staff's work. Thank you again to our community partners for making all of this possible. Now, I'm really excited to introduce our guest speakers for the keynote conversation portion of today's gala. We are very fortunate today to be joined by Larissa Lam and Baldwin Chu, who are the filmmakers behind the documentary Far East, Deep South. Before we introduce them, let's first take a look at the trailer for the movie, and then I will introduce Larissa and Baldwin.
Growing up, it was always kind of a mystery about my dad and his side of the family. Whenever my brother and I would ask him about my grandfather, he would just say, "Oh, it's a sad story, it's not a big deal." One day we came across this photo of a gravestone, and that's when my dad finally told us that this is where my grandfather and great-grandfather were buried. But not in China, in Mississippi.
Chinese people in Mississippi? What happened there?
I actually don't know where we're going and where we're going.
Last thing I thought I'd ever find in Mississippi was a Chinese museum.
I guess there was more than just my grandfather and my great-grandfather.
When the Chinese first came to the Delta, they were treated like we were.
Everything was very segregated. I mean, it was black, white. We were just really in the middle.
I had to attend a segregated one-room schoolhouse.
Growing up, I read about segregation, and I thought that it only affected the black community.
I just didn't really think that it happened to the Chinese too.
What?
Great-grandpa!
Oh my God! I knew all your family.
It is so important for people to know what happened with the Chinese Exclusion Act and how it affected Chinese Americans throughout the nation, including the South.
All right, well, I know many of you have had a chance to watch Far East Deep South yesterday as part of our gala celebration. For those of you who've not had a chance to see the movie yet, you saw from the trailer how deeply moving, how timely, how important of a film it is for our current moment. One of the things that it makes me think of as someone who, again, grew up in California and then moved to the Midwest from the East Coast is the fact that this movie tells us about the story, often hidden times, oftentimes forgotten, of Chinese and other Asian Americans in regions of the United States like the South and also like the Midwest. And so to me, it was a deeply affecting movie. We're so glad to have Larissa Lamb and Baldwin Chu with us today. Let me introduce them quickly individually, and then we'll get right into the conversation. Larissa Lamb is the director, writer, and producer of Far East Deep South, which is her feature film directorial debut. Larissa won the 2021 Mary Pickford Award for Outstanding Achievement in Filmmaking at the Coronado Island Film Festival. In addition to directing Far East Deep South, Larissa is also an award-winning singer and songwriter who has released 4 is a native of Diamond Bar, California, and graduated from UCLA with a degree in business economics. Next, let me introduce Baldwin Chu. Baldwin Chu is a producer of Far East Deep South, and more importantly, those of you who watched the movie will recognize him and his family as the subjects of that film. In addition to his work on Far East Deep South, Baldwin is a motivational speaker and a rapper known by his stage name Only One, and his videos have gone viral with over 1 million views on YouTube. He was born in San Francisco and raised in Sacramento, fellow Californian, where he later graduated from Cal State Sacramento with a degree in mechanical engineering. Welcome, Larissa and Baldwin. It's good to see you both. Thanks for joining us for today.
Hi, Ann. Thank you so much for having us.
Hey, how's it going? I hope you guys can hear us.
We can hear you perfectly.
All right.
Why don't we go ahead and dive right in, because we have a lot to talk about. And I want to start maybe with a question for Baldwin, since it is your family at the heart of this film. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to make this film?
Well, actually, I mean, to come to make the film, it was really her idea. My idea actually was to just go to Mississippi. Actually, it was my brother's idea first, and to just kind of my idea was make a home video, and leave it at that. And that should be good enough to educate, hopefully, our daughter for the future. And it was actually,
we didn't know we were going to find anything.
We didn't think
we were just going to go to a gravesite if we could find the gravesite, and take some pictures,
put some flowers on there, pay our respects, and
go home. We even went to Graceland the day before. You know, we were on vacation.
We thought that was going to be the highlight of the trip.
Seeing Elvis's house, right?
Oh, you should have saw my dad doing his Elvis impersonation. We probably should have put that in the film.
That was fun.
Yeah.
And we thought that was going to be the highlight. And lo and behold, as you saw in the film, we had discovered so much more. And it became evident to me, not necessarily to him, once we went to the museum, and then after we found the Bible, oops, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen it, and, ended up finding all this other information and people who knew his family, and of course, discovering what you mentioned, the history that most of us didn't learn growing up, about the Chinese in the South and other parts of the country. And especially, we all learn about segregation and the American South, and nowhere in our history books do we learn about the contributions and the impact of discriminatory laws like Jim Crow laws had on our community. So I said, I think other people need to hear the story.
Yeah. I would have been fine leaving it with just our family, but she had the brighter idea.
Well, I'm so glad you all decided to make what is probably the ultimate home video, of our time for all of us to watch. I just have to sort of wonder, since probably not a lot of us maybe have gone to Mississippi or to other parts of the South, what was it like spending time in Mississippi while you made the film? How did your experiences there surprise you in terms of what you knew about the region, and what sort of your actual experience there on the ground was like?
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely my first impression before I even got there was basically what you see on TV and what you read on textbooks, and just the I guess, the rhetoric that Mississippi is a place of racists and racism. So be careful if you go out there, right? When we got there, I mean, at least in the regions that we were in, there, we actually experienced the whole other part of it, which was Southern hospitality. and people welcomed us. It was weird because we thought people would be like, what are those Chinese people doing there? But apparently they were used to seeing Chinese people, obviously, you know, historically, and they were like, what are you Californians doing here? So that was really kind of like the weird thing.
Yeah, and I think there was definitely this element of Southern hospitality. And if you've seen the film, I mean, we know many people have commented, like there's the juxtaposition of the racism and the discrimination, but yet there is still an atmosphere, at least current day, with the Southern hospitality and people extending their help to us. And I think that you could run that same parallel with a place like Detroit, which has also got a history of racism and riots. And of course, you mentioned Vincent Chin earlier, and so, but yet, you know, I think most of you have also encountered neighbors, right? And on a daily basis and interaction, it's very different than when you see kind of the macro versus the micro, but also the systemic issues versus the personal relationships.
I think one of the things that also stood out to me about your experiences in Mississippi too is that you know, it's an urban versus rural thing as well, right? I mean, I think that there are also, you know, places in the South, cities like Houston that have very large Asian populations, but that one of the things that distinguishes, you know, where your grandfather and great-grandfather's, you know, store was located is that it wasn't in a big city. And I think that also probably has something to do with it, I imagine.
Yeah, I definitely think so. You know, somebody recently commented, like, if we had gone to New York and tried to find City Hall and get answers, we would have been out of luck, right? Or we live in Los Angeles, same thing. I don't think people would have turned around and said, like, oh yeah, by the way, go to the Chinese American Museum, you know, downtown right away and look up Emily Jones or, you know, whoever's there, you know. And so that's the thing. There is more of a small town hospitality. And even when you get to Pace, Mississippi, I mean, we look back on that, the small town where you met Mayor LaVon Jackson. The first day we went there, I mean, we literally could have just walked into City Hall. He probably would have been there and talked to us, but we had a big city mind.
Yeah.
We just didn't think like we could just walk in, knock on the door. Like it looked like an abandoned town. We didn't know.
Yeah. I think it made it a lot easier for people to build relationships there as well, especially even their mentality towards us. They're just used to knowing everybody when the town only has a couple hundred people, you know, in that small little town, or a few hundred people in the bigger towns. And so when they met us, I think it was already in their culture to be welcoming.
Yeah, and I think that's something that is a really wonderful takeaway from the movie is that, you know, oftentimes we have maybe some preconceived assumptions or notions, and you know, oftentimes that's good. It's good to stay safe, right? To kind of keep yourself, sometimes be a little bit careful, especially in this day and age, but also to know that people are really actually very interested in getting to know who we are as people and as a community. I think that's a really good sort of segue for maybe for us to talk about the movie itself for a few minutes. And I want to start with maybe showing a clip that isn't from the movie. It's actually from a different vignette that I actually have used in my teaching and was the first way that I learned about the history of Chinese Americans in the Mississippi River Delta, which was a video segment that AJ Plus made a few years ago. And I think some of the folks, especially Gilroy and Sally Chow, also appear, and you all interviewed them in Far East Deep South. But I want to play a quick clip of Sally and Gilroy doing something that probably many of us will recognize and maybe even salivate over a little bit as a way to maybe get into some of the questions that I have about the Chinese American experience in Mississippi. Let's play that clip.
For more than 100 years, the Delta has also been home to a small but influential Chinese community that's been navigating an identity that's both American and Chinese.
Honey, I'm gonna run in and get the corn. We need to stir fry that. Let me get that.
This is Sally and Gilroy Chow, and this is their 46-year-old walk. We heard about these dinner parties they throw to get together with friends and eat Southern-style Chinese food, like fried rice with lots of bacon.
So I wanted to just sort of share that for a number of reasons. When I show that clip to my students lose their mind when they hear Sally Chow's accent. When she just says, let me go get that. I can't do it justice, so I won't try, but let me go get that corn. But I think, one of the things that also stands out is just the food that everybody recognizes immediately. The tasiu, the barbecued roast pork, and the fried rice, but with a Southern twist, with lots of bacon. So I wanted to use that clip maybe to ask you all to think about how, based on your conversations with the people there, your understanding of your family's history, how is the Chinese American experience in California similar to the Chinese American experience in Mississippi, socially, culturally? I mean, we saw some of the food, and how is it different? And maybe that's a way of asking in general, are there things that you believe are common to being Chinese American, no matter where you are in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, definitely food is a big thing. Family.
And we have tasted Sally and Gilroy's cooking, and they do a feast. And oh my gosh, Sally is also like a world-class baker and makes the most amazing pecan pie. I know, I'm making you all hungry. And yes, the bacon grease, right?
Yeah,
that
so
Gilroy
I was
secret.
like, why is this fried rice so good? And she was like, it's Southern fried rice. And I was like, what makes it Southern? And she was like, oh no, oh, you're on YouTube. We're gonna give the secret out. She was like, bacon grease. I'm like, oh, I've never thrown bacon grease in there to cook fried rice. And it's funny because like the whole thing, like, we ate fried rice with a fork.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's one of the common threads is food. I mean, fried rice is kind of a staple, or any type of meat, right? Any type of noodles is going to be eaten as far as being like, I think, Chinese American.
We like calling it about like dim sum diplomacy. Like how do you get people to really understand our culture and get to know us better and relate to us? Is like dim sum diplomacy. Let's go get some dim sum together.
Yeah, but I mean, back to the original question of like some other commonalities with, whether it's California, Detroit, or other places. I think family is very important.
Yep.
And the tight-knit community, I mean, we'd hear the stories of, we showed it a little bit in our film. We wish we could have devoted more time to it, but like they would have banquets and dance parties, and they would gather together on weekends, like on their like 2 hours that they had off from not running their grocery stores. They would get together on weddings and special occasions, and that was even play mahjong. Like that was something they did back in the day, and it was really important. I think community is really important, to most Chinese Americans and Asian Americans in general.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we know historically to be true is that, even in places like California, in historic Chinatowns, that people would gather on Sundays from all different parts of the region, right? From the Bay Area, if they were working out in mining towns or in fishing camps.
Oh, you're still here, Coach Ray.
They would come and sort of celebrate the weekend and be with each other and to find community. So it's really nice to see that, wherever you are in the United States. I think another aspect of the kind of really amazing visual materials that you found, all of these photographs, both from the immigration records to the photographs in the museum, one of the things that really stood out to me was how Baldwin, we saw sort of pictures of your grandfather, Casey Liu, as well as the stories that his former customers told us about him. There were stories about how outgoing he was, about how popular he was, about how far he could throw something. He was shown standing next to like really fast, beautiful looking cars. How did Casey Liu defy stereotypes about Chinese people in the United States? And I guess maybe you might start by telling us a little bit about what are some of these stereotypes, and some of us might be familiar with them already, but what are stereotypes that Chinese people often find themselves up against in the United States? How did Casey Liu defy those stereotypes? And was it important for you all to highlight that in the movie?
I'll let Larissa talk about the importance of it, but like, I mean, some of the common stereotypes would be, we're small, and apparently Casey Liu was a sizable man. Another stereotype would be like, we're not really outgoing, we're quiet. And it seemed like he was pretty social, especially with, some of the people in his community. I think another thing is that he's, what's another, language, that none of us speak English, but obviously, he communicated well with the people around him. So he spoke English, and actually he wasn't born in the United States. So he actually learned English in America probably, and he spoke it well. So those are, I mean, those are really basic stereotypes, and even athleticism. Like just to talk about like how like a lot of times we don't think about the Chinese community or Asian community like being like, oh, they're really athletic, and he apparently
he could throw a ball farther than John Bassey could, right?
Yeah.
Italian kid. And I think part of that is painting a picture. Some of it was more intentional and some of it was kind of the byproduct of, I think, just him being him, right? There actually was a line that I cut at one point. There was somebody that said like he had really big hands, and it was kind of a funny moment. And I actually had like Edwin, his brother, they all looked at their hands too, and so like I think they inherited his grandfather's hands. I ended up cutting it because it got a little cheesy, but it was again illustrating the fact that he was a larger man, not your stereotype of a diminutive, wimpy, Chinese man. And then he had really nice style. He dressed really well. He wasn't frumpy, and I think there's one photo of him, I think, that he's reading like a magazine or something, and he looks like a cover boy, like he looks like he should be on the cover of a magazine. And I really wanted to show that side of, I think, a Chinese man, especially back in those days.
It reminds me of a lot of the conversations we have about the model minority stereotype, right, of Asian Americans, but especially East Asian Americans, Chinese, Japanese, Korean Americans, and South Asian Americans as being, kind of quiet and go along to get along, don't make a lot of trouble, not very athletic, mostly sticking to books. And one of the things I loved about seeing Casey Liu in this movie was he was kind of the antithesis of that. He was the opposite of that. He broke all of those stereotypes, and we really, it actually kind of dovetails really nicely with the release of movies like Shang-Chi this summer that give us different models of Asian and especially Chinese representation in mainstream media. I was
going to say he was a sensitive guy, because as we found with the letter, that's the part that floored me the most. Is you bring up the masculine side, but there's also that stereotype, and there's some truth to this about Chinese men being reserved, especially the older generation, not expressing their feelings. I mean, we saw it with Baldwin's dad. I mean, he's kind of like a closed book until we went on this journey. Don't know what he's thinking or feeling. Sometimes we still can't figure out what he's thinking or feeling to this day. But then his own father, Casey Liu, wrote this beautiful letter to another Chinese man confessing his feelings of how lonely he was and how much he missed his family. And that to me was very surprising.
Yeah, I think also to expand on that is, I think when we learned that about my grandfather, we also learned about other people in the area, and we learned about like other people that were also athletic. They were on the basketball team. The best player on the Pace High School basketball team was this little Chinese guy, and he was like the best player, and he wasn't allowed to play in Cleveland because of the segregated school. So he went to Pace, and then he beat Cleveland. Like stories of other athletic, like other like football players.
Yeah, there were a lot of football players from the Chinese American
and they're
community.
like, oh,
stories you don't hear about.
You hear someone say like, I could have went and played in college, but we didn't think there was a future in football, so I went and got an education instead. I'm like, you could have played in the NFL. You could have played in college football, but you chose to go to school. You don't hear about those things.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. And Larissa, I really appreciate your point about how the strength of that, of his personality came from his being sensitive, right? That it wasn't about just always kind of throwing punches or throwing, a ball or driving fast. It was also about expressing his emotions and his affection for and love for his family. We talked a little bit about how the movie, kind of shows the way that these grocery stores that Chinese Americans ran in the South, were places for maintaining ties to Chinese culture, right? The things that they sold, and also for building community, for people getting together, especially across racial lines. I think that's a really important point for us here in Michigan to reflect on, especially given the kind of history of our state. But let's talk a little bit about the flip side, right? What are some of the challenges that grocery store owners who were Chinese Americans faced in the Mississippi River Delta, and how did they overcome those challenges? And to start that conversation, I want to point to another clip that we have of, again, Sally Chow talking about some of the hardships that Chinese American grocery store owners face, especially after the kind of World War II period when things started to maybe go south a little bit. Let's run that clip of Sally Chow reflecting on some of the hardships of running a Chinese store in the Mississippi River Delta.
But over time, as more farm jobs were lost to machines, unemployment increased, and so did poverty and drug use. Chinese-owned grocery stores became easy targets.
My brothers, they have been victims of 2 armed robberies within the last few years. Luckily, they have survived. We just don't even want to think about it.
So I think, to me, I wanted to show that clip because it's clear how much it affects her, how deeply, this is not just a good, there are lots of different dimensions of this experience. So I wonder, Larissa or Baldwin, either of you, if you could say a little bit about how you see the challenges that maybe are difficult to talk about that you tried to tackle in Far East Deep South.
Mm-hmm. Well, we want to first off say, like, there is a difference in time periods. And I know you mentioned World War II, but really some of the issues that Frida, who's also in our film, who we just saw in that clip, Frida Kwan, mentioned is in more recent decades, that
more like
post-civil rights era, post, a great society and all that stuff. And so there is kind of a delineation there, which is a much longer conversation, but part of it is, the challenges. It's a tough life, and this is true for many small business owners, right? I think that's a myth that, oh, you're running a business. And, even you were talking about Chinese grocery stores. It's not a Chinese grocery store when we think of in the major cities. They were grocery stores that were owned by Chinese, but they really sold mainly to the community that was either Black or mixed, multicultural. Sure, they might have sold like Chinese vegetables, like I think we heard about in your grandparents' store, but by and large, their clientele was non-Chinese. And they faced the discrimination in terms of, not just in their store, but like going out into the neighborhoods. Again, this is in the pre-civil rights era, but yet some of those microaggressions and even, discrimination followed as time went on. So whether it's by the community or by different laws. So, that was definitely a challenge. And I think with the way people dealt with it, is internalized it. I think there's some opportunities like for Frida to talk about it like now. Even like in our film, there are a few people that talked about like I think David Dunn, I think that might have been the first time he might have like publicly shared about some of that discrimination he faced in school.
Yeah, and then even, if you talk about even today, CBS News just did a documentary on the original series that featured not only us, but, a current Mississippi resident, multi-generational young person that's been in the Delta running a Chinese-owned grocery store in a similar neighborhood in Greenville, and he just recently was attacked, and and he in his questioning went back to basically Gilroy's family in that documentary, asking them like, what was different back then where you guys could kind of get along? What was that thing? And it was harder back then, yet things like it's hard today and it's supposed to be better today. And so there is something going on within our society, within our communities, that's not allowing. And I think part of it is not understanding our history. A lot of the people today, even when we went back to Mississippi to do a test screening of Far East Deep South, when we went into like the predominantly Black schools and met up with the Black teachers, and the teachers were like, yes, I remember these stories of me as a child going into Chinese-owned grocery stores, and we never really thought much about it. They were just there and it was okay. We were cool. But these younger kids, we're not even teaching them history about themselves. So all the kids were fascinated with like 2 Chinese people walk into a classroom. They're like, where are these Chinese people from? They own grocery stores? We used to, the teacher, did you ever shop in a Chinese-owned grocery store? And teacher like, yeah, we did. So it's been lost in the history. Our schools aren't teaching it. The kids aren't knowing it. They're no longer growing up understanding that we had community in a hard time. And so today, everyone's more concerned about themselves.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a much longer conversation about the ills of society today, and it goes across, I think, racial lines. But certainly, I think we can kind of sum it up by a lot of the older folks, whether they were Chinese that we talked to or whether they were Black, that we talked to. It's like the younger generation is just not the same. And again, much longer conversation regarding why we are at, why it's not the same.
Why things are different, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listening to you both, I'm struck by, a lot of the kind of resonances to today, right? Some of the struggles, especially during COVID, we know that Asian American owned small businesses have been hit particularly hard, and to see, what that was like, and to see those struggles in history are real. And then the other thing too that I was really appreciative of is, the way that some of the Chinese Americans that your film talked about, right, the way that they responded to discrimination, was, I think someone mentioned that, in segregated movie theaters, some of the Chinese Americans went up to sit in the balcony, in the segregated balcony that was set apart for African American audience members at these segregated movie theaters. Out of solidarity. And I think we see a lot of that today too, with younger Asian American activists who recognize in the aftermath of the protests against the killing of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, right, and Ahmaud Arbery, that the Asian American community has to be part of that conversation. So it's really lovely to see that connection to today. I think, we have a few minutes left, and I want to maybe move us from talking about the history that the movie does such a nice job of portraying to thinking about what we do and where we go from here. And I want to start with something we've already talked about, which is the idea that Michigan and the Midwest, like the South, is a region where people kind of often assume that Asian Americans don't have a history, or that it's not worth knowing about, right? We were just talking about this in terms of your experiences of visiting classes. So why do you think it's important for us to know about Asian American history, particularly in these places? And if folks who are watching either on the webinar today or on YouTube or on Facebook Live, if they want to learn more about this history, where do you suggest that we start?
You want to take the first question, and I'll do the second one, or we'll combine. We tag team.
Yeah, I mean, we really think that education is the key, and there's a lot of these. When we talk about perceptions, we talk about three things that lead to the way people perceive who we are, or perceive anybody. It's what we know. What we know, what we experience, and what we see, right? And first of all, I mean, if you're talking about Shang-Chi and talking about media, we obviously don't see Chinese Americans or Asian Americans as we really are. We're seen in different lights, right? So most of America, we're only 6% of the country, right? So most of the people's ideas of us is what they see on TV and media and all that, and it's not who we are.
We don't all know martial arts. He does, but I don't.
And then what we know, obviously education isn't there. You're learning, a lot of people are learning about this history in the South of Chinese Americans going back over 100 years, but there's a lot of parts of the country that doesn't know this. There's a lot of people that don't know about the history of Chinese in Michigan or in Louisiana or in Minnesota or in Kansas, right? We're spread across, but we don't know it because we're not educated. So again, education, that's strike two for us. And then experience. How many people really get to experience who we are? And that goes on both of our shoulders, the non-Chinese people and us, right? Are we going out of our way? Are we intentionally trying to meet people and letting people know who we are? Are we having dim sum diplomacy? Are we taking them out to eat dim sum and they've never had a chicken feet ever in their life? Are we making our friends eat that stuff and having conversation, right? Are we getting to know each other based on life and not just on race? And I think we're missing that a lot. So we have 3 strikes already. So for what we're trying to do with our film is we really think we really need to start with education. And Larissa can talk a little bit more about the importance of why education in the local areas is where we can start.
Well, and the way we are learning education traditionally has been, maybe you'll learn about the railroads, Chinese building the railroads in the 1800s, and then we kind of disappear in the history books, right? And then we don't show up again until, at least from the Asian narrative, until Japanese incarceration of World War II. And, in between, you don't learn anything about what happened to Asians. And it's like we kind of disappeared and we show up again. And so that's why people have this perpetual foreigner concept of us, because we don't show up until we start immigrating here, or we come over from Vietnam after the Vietnam War. And so the all those chapters that are missing, why we felt so compelled to make this is the fact that we do learn about the American South, and we have been part of that narrative the whole time. Or, learning about Michigan and Detroit, and we all learn about Henry Ford and the auto factories, yet we don't learn about the Chinese workers getting recruited to work in those factories, right? And of course, we're only starting now in recent years, especially in this last couple of years, to learn about Vincent Chin. We've learned about it, about a decade ago, but most people still don't know. I've had so many people say like, oh, I shared something about Vincent Chin because we were part of a video from an NBC Asian America talking about it. They're like, we didn't know about this. And so it's because we don't know about these stories that people feel like we don't belong. We're constantly foreigners. And for myself, I've never felt a personal attachment to history. Growing up, learning about slavery and segregation, I thought that was, that just affected Black people. I didn't know it affected our community. So now, as personally, I feel a stronger connection to the Black community, the Indigenous community, the Latino community, because we all had to go through different types of racism and discrimination over the years. And so, for us, it's so imperative that we know this. And some suggestions for people that are watching out there. Organizations like ACA, OCA, Chinese American Citizens Alliances that are like local chapters in a lot of these cities that people don't know about, that have been around. You guys are celebrating 50 years. That's a lot of history. You are kind of like the keepers of that history. A lot of people don't realize that. And there's local museums and archives. We happen to be at Delta State University in Cleveland, Mississippi. There are archives of files and photos and things at a lot of your local universities. Again, it's not widely publicized, but there have been people actually keeping track. Library of Congress. If you do a Google search, and I just did it the other day, Google Chinese Michigan, you'll actually find some records. You'll find some photos of things. So the government has, and local entities have been keeping track. The bad thing is people haven't necessarily been seeking them out, or they don't realize that they're there.
To be sought out.
To be sought out. So it's up to us as a community to help educate people about these tools, but also to continue to collect and contribute artifacts. If we never went to Mississippi and encountered all these people, and your dad never actually pulled out his photo album or even the film reels, if you see at the very end, they would be lost to history. In Naperville, Illinois, actually, there is a Naper Settlement, one of the museums there. They actually got a grant a few years ago to collect artifacts from the Chinese and the Indian community, because there's such a huge population growth there. And so they used a film screening of ours for our previous film, Finding Cleveland, as a kind of a launch. And they said, somebody donated their old rice cooker. So one of your junk could be in a museum. It's an archivist treasure. So think about those things in permanence, or even the Bible and his family is now at the museum. Again, somebody's junk, or could have given it away to Goodwill.
Don't Marie Kondo your stuff. Donate it to an archive or a museum.
So think about those things of legacy, because if we don't contribute to, and not just Chinese museums or Asian specific, but to the general population museums. Every city, every state has a local historical society, a local museum. Please seek them out and encourage them to do special exhibits and to have this history displayed.
And don't feel like you need to do it at a Chinese or an Asian historical society. There are historical societies just for the city.
That's what I just said.
Right, I know. But I mean, there's also you see these Chinese historical societies where people think, oh, I'm just going to go to the Chinese historical society and donate my stuff there, or talk to the Chinese museum, right? But there's
a Michigan State Museum, there's a Detroit Museum, you know.
Put your artifacts there so the people that are not looking for Chinese stuff sees it.
And libraries too.
And libraries, yeah.
Yeah.
We can go on. We've there's a treasure trove of places that you can now seek information and donate information to.
No, you're inspiring me to march down to the Washington County Historical Society and have them take my stuff. It'll be a good way to clean my house as well. I think this is actually a really good point, maybe to introduce some of the things that you guys have done, as some of the videos and performances that you all have made to kind of make this point about the importance of Asian American history. And in particular, I'm thinking about this parody of Hamilton, which some of you who are watching may know to be the very popular musical by Lin-Manuel Miranda about Alexander Hamilton. And we have our own version of that for Asian American history. So let's take a look at that.
All right.
And then we'll come back and talk a little bit more with Baldwin and Larissa.
There's nothing that our country needs more than learning our history and who came to our shores. The first Asians came to this land in 1587, broke their backs working with their hands, indentured servants and even slaves. But quietly this country was paved. Exclusion laws tried to suppress and kick us. We fought for you, America. All we did was
work in the mines, work plantations.
Yes, cotton fields.
History's coming.
They brought us here,
needed us,
so we can.
History says that we didn't do much. History doesn't really know. People say history can't be touched, but there's a lot it doesn't show. Look around, a revolution's happening around us.
So let us
make history
work.
It's bad enough people say we don't belong. People shouting in the square. It's bad enough they don't care that they're wrong. Blaming us, it's just not fair. Look around,
Larissa, remind me what we're looking for.
We're looking for truth. People we devoted our lives to. Work. Irrigated the farms to. Work. Left our homes so that we can. Work. Whoa.
There's nothing like sweating in the city, except no one ever stopped or paused to call us pretty. Excuse me, miss, I know about the railroads left out of the pictures now. Where did we all go? They said we ate rats. Today they say bats. They aiming to be blaming when they're saying all that.
And they thought it was funny.
Took all of their money, blew up our daddies and minds. Goodbye, Sonny.
I've been reading Common Sense by Thomas Paine. So men say that I'm intense or I'm insane.
You want a revolution, I want a revelation. So listen to my declaration.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And when I meet Thomas Jefferson, I'ma compel him to include Asians in the sequel.
Work.
Look around, fought the wars. How lucky we are to be alive right now. Look around for generations. How lucky we are to be alive right now. History is happening, it's been happening. We just happen to be in the most diverse country in the world. Diverse country in the world. Look around, cross the seas. How lucky we are to be alive right now. Look around, created jobs. How lucky we are to be alive right now. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Look around, how lucky we are to be alive right now. History is happening, it's been happening. We just happen to be in the most diverse country in the world. Diverse country in the world.
Work.
Wonky Mark.
Work.
Daniel Midaway.
Work.
Larry Ilion.
Work.
442nd Infantry.
Anna Mae Wong, Philip J. Song, Dr. Mabel Lee, come on.
Diverse country
in the world.
Amazing. I will never hear that song the same way. I think the Wonka Mark shout out in particular. I mean, I think the thing that about that video, which thank you for sharing that with us, all of us. The thing about that video that I think maybe kind of helps us to pivot to my last question for us to think about for today, is the photo that you shared in the performance just now, of the spray paint on the fence in San Francisco in 2020. We all have heard about and know about, and some folks earlier talked about as part of our gala, the fact that during the pandemic we have seen a heightened rise, a surge in anti-Asian bias and discrimination, and in many tragic cases in physical violence. People who are watching the movie will kind of get a sense that it's a pre-pandemic movie. No one's wearing masks, and now we all know, what it is. The world looks a little bit different. But I wonder, what does it mean to the both of you to tell this story, and what do you hope that audiences will take away from it now versus when you began the project? Has that changed in terms of, when you started putting this film together versus releasing it and showing it to audiences in the midst of the pandemic?
Well, I'll start by saying, prior to the pandemic, we were in the midst of editing. And Baldwin and I had an incident at a local bowling alley. And we live in Los Angeles, very multicultural, very progressive city. And somebody made a racist comment towards us, again, before anybody even knew what the word, coronavirus meant. And that made me feel that sense of, again, being a perpetual foreigner, the stereotype and feeling like I was a second-class citizen. And it made me double down on the sense of framing the film as about American identity. Because originally, I think, before we went to the National Archives and discovered the lineage about his family being so deep in, 5, including our daughter, 6 generations in the United States, we really thought it was about even just the American South and how American we are just belonging in the South. And then I realized it had to be broader than that because, in the film opening, where are you from? Where are you really from? How many of us have had our Americanness questioned, regardless of where we were born? Even you could be, my parents have been in this country longer than they were in China, and in Hong Kong. Yet they, even prior to the pandemic, had an incident where somebody told them to go back to their country or go back home from where they came from. So this has been in our community. We maybe never talked about it, didn't know how to articulate it, had no place to report it. So we thank our friends at Stop AAPI Hate who have started to track these incidents. We're good friends with Russell Jung, who's one of the co-founders. And because these stories are finally coming to light, people are now knowing, again, the themes that we made in the film were happening before the pandemic. The pandemic just put everything to the surface and amplified the hidden fears and racism that people had. And it all goes back to what we've been talking about this whole time, is people not understanding our history, not knowing that there's a strong lineage in this country, that you look at him versus you look at somebody who might be Caucasian, or even somebody that is, Black. Your default thinking is like, oh, they're American, where you look at him and you think, oh, he must just have gotten here. Like he's a new immigrant.
It's funny because our editor is German American. And as he was helping us edit and learning this history as we were all going along, I think he said to you, he was like, dang, Larissa, Baldwin's more American than me.
Yeah, he's only 3rd generation. And he also said no one's ever asked him, where you really from? In his whole life, right? And so it was eye-opening for him to kind of be in, to see where it is in our shoes. And I think that's what it is. Like, we hopefully create a film that is showing empathy, that we don't want it to be just limited to an Asian American audience. And we're really grateful to our partners at PBS that broadcast our film earlier this year, that people of all colors and backgrounds across the country have been able to watch the film. But we know the long-term goal is really to get into schools, and to really change the way curriculum is taught. And in our case, even though ethnic studies bills are thankfully being introduced, we have a natural entry point. We already learn about segregation and the Jim Crow South, and many schools are already learning about immigration. And so it's just inserting a more of the broader history that we're talking about here. We just even want just one sentence, and the Chinese were there too, or the Asians were impacted too. It's not like we're asking a whole lot as a starting point to be able to incorporate this. And I mean, even talking about influencing teachers and parents. Can you talk a little bit about our experience with the PTA?
Yeah, for even like in our local schools here, my daughter goes to a Chinese immersion school, and they thought, well, there's enough Chinese stuff going on. We don't need to learn about Asian American.
And these were the Chinese
history.
American parents that were saying this. So I think this is kind of a call to action for all of you out there too, of what you can do. You don't have to make a fancy documentary, but keep going.
but just educate your own schools, your children's schools, if you're in the community, letting them know that there's a difference between what's going on in China and what's traditionally happened thousands of years ago, and those cultures and those traditions, and different than what is American history. Asian American history is American history.
Well, and one of the things that I think people conflate, right? They conflate cultural things with, American history, where, oh, we do Chinese New Year celebration and Mid-Autumn Festival at the school. That should be enough. And I'm like, but that isn't the culture here in America. And that history, and you also exclude, all the other Asian ethnic groups. We're not all the same. There's Cambodian, there's Vietnamese, there's Korean. I mean, so everybody kind of lumps us together. So it's up to us to help people distinguish, and doing it kind of in a loving manner, where, and again, some of these people were Asian Americans who were saying this, we don't need to learn all this.
I mean, you mentioning Wong Kim Ark, I mean, that's a great example of why aren't we learning about Wong Kim Ark? It's probably the most important thing to most immigrants and to just Americans.
Anybody born here.
Anyone is I'm born here, I'm going to get my birth certificate, right? And to be to know that Wong Kim Ark was critical in, upholding what the 14th Amendment says about our birthright citizenship. Why isn't that taught in our schools.
There should be a Wong Kim Ark Street, right? Like there isn't, or a day,
right?
You know,
like
or a school named after him, right?
Anytime you sing "Happy Birthday" to somebody, you should be thinking about Wong Kim Ark.
In America, right?
In America, at least, right?
So I mean, I think that's the responsibility all of us have. And to kind of just finish off a little bit when Baldwin's point is like the reason it's starting locally, as much as we're doing things on a broad scale, we're also doing things on a local level. Last year, our daughter started kindergarten. That's where we had that conversation. We're like, why do we need API History Month here? And 2 years later, Baldwin helped spearhead the first Asian American History Month that our school actually celebrated. And it takes us in the trenches, all of you out there, to make that impact and not to wait. And I know you as a group are doing it as a community, but don't think you have to like move mountains nationally. It starts locally for sure.
Thank you so much for that really important reminder. I think one of the things that I'm reminded of with what you just said is the important work that ACA is doing as part of OCA Asian Pacific American Advocates to include Asian American studies, Asian American history, and ethnic studies more generally in K-12 curriculum, building on the momentum of states like Illinois, who recently passed legislation to make that happen. That ACA is involved in that work, and folks who have been inspired by our conversation today should get involved because it does start at the local level, not just advocating for curriculum changes, but also running for school board and being in positions of power, at very sort of grassroots level to champion these important changes. And then, maybe at some point we can also get some fried rice with a lot of bacon in school lunches, and that can help.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing I want to mention is that, the school component, and that's something we're very active in, especially in K through 12. I mean, it's great that there's Asian American studies in universities, you're teaching it, but that's too late for some people, right? We have to get people at the public school level and even private schools to learn about it at an earlier age. And certainly with our film, it's probably more appropriate for middle school and high schools. But, we started something called the First Class Initiative because we knew a lot of public schools were also underfunded, or a lot of budgets were frozen, especially during this pandemic. And so if teachers, if schools that would like to use or even screen Far East Deep South for the first time in their classrooms, we've also created a discussion guide so that we know a lot of teachers, even Asian teachers, don't know our history. We've equipped them with basically, this is what you need to teach your students, this is what you can use, these are all the things you need to do to be able to share this in their classes. You can go and maybe we'll drop the link in the, I don't know if we can drop the link in the chat, but you can go to fareastdeepsouth.com, our website, /First Class Initiative. Teachers can apply to tap into our grant to get a copy and a discussion guide to use in the classrooms. And of course, if you are wanting to help fund some of these schools to be able to use our film in their classrooms, Phil, you're welcome to make a tax-deductible donation to our First Class Initiative Fund, or to even purchase an academic copy to donate to a school of our film.
Well, with that, I want to say thank you again, Baldwin Chu and Larissa Lamb. Thank you so much for not only making this wonderful film, but also for spending your afternoon with us with the Association of Chinese Americans. Thanks for all that you've shared with us today and for inspiring us to continue to make the kind of change that your grandfather and your great-grandfather Baldwin were doing way back when in the Mississippi River Delta, to do it here, right here in Southeastern Michigan. Thank you so much again for your time and for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and I'm dropping up some of our links, and feel free to connect with us. We're also on social media, and you can go to our website, fareastdeepsouth.com. And I left Baldwin's email.
And I like how she said, you want to contact us? Talk to him.
He's much quicker at responding than I am. That's why I put his in. I think you mentioned we're married, but I mean, hopefully people picked up on that we're married.
Good reminder for me.
But we hope to see you all sometime in person out in the Michigan, Detroit area. We'd love to come out and have some, fried rice out there.
We'll think of a Midwestern specialty to adapt.
There's probably potatoes in it or something, right?
Yeah, I think a Chinese American hot dish is what you have coming your way. So
there you go.
All righty. Well, take care. Thank you again.
Thank you.
That was our conversation with Baldwin Chu and Larissa Lam, the filmmakers behind Far East, Deep South. Thank you so much for joining us for that keynote conversation. Before we end the program, I want to turn it over to the president of ACA again, Shenlin Chen, for some closing remarks. Shenlin?
Thank you, Ian. Well, I hope you all enjoyed the program we have prepared for you. I am very proud of this special edition of ACA Annual Celebration Gala with Far East Deep South film screening and a conversation. This is just wonderful. And we tried to bring it in 2 years ago, but it didn't work out. But I think now is even a better time. So if I may take a moment to recognize our 49th anniversary celebration planning, not just the whole event, the planning committee for putting this wonderful event together. Yep, you will see this whole team. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Peggy. Thank you, our backstage staff, Ingrid, for your translation, and also Curtis for being able to be there the whole time from the first minute until the very end to make sure everything just going smoothly. And then also thank you, Ian, for doing such a wonderful job as our MC and moderator. Now I have a fear that either ABC or CBS is going to chase after you, and then I think you did a just awesome job. And I want to express my deepest thanks to all of you who joined us today to close this year with a very special celebration and a beautiful ending. Next year, actually, it will be ACA's 50-year anniversary. And I just heard that Disney and Starbucks are doing theirs 50 years as well, celebration as well. And our theme is passing the torch, remembering our history, reimagine the future. We're so happy to have officially kicked off the year-long celebration by viewing Far East Deep South and listening to Baldwin and Larissa and their family story. There's a quote in the beginning of the film, I don't know whether you remember, perhaps our brightest hope of the future lies in the lessons of the past. Yes, it is important to reflect on the past that led us to where we are today before we embark on the future. In 2022, I hope we all stayed in good spirits and good health, and that we all continue to pursue our dream proudly. And we may not know when the COVID-19 battle will end and all the challenges imposed upon us will finish, but we should all keep faith and continue to embrace the hopes and aspirations of the Asian Pacific Americans. So thank you for joining us. Ian, back to you.
Thank you, Shenlin. Before we say goodbye, I just want to say thank you again for taking the time this afternoon to be with us for our 49th anniversary celebration gala. It has been a privilege to share the time with you this afternoon. We hope that you learned a lot, and especially want to thank our annual sponsors, our event sponsors, our individual donors, and our community partners for all that they do to make our work at ACA possible. Now, to play us out, we're very happy to share with you one more performance by Baldwin and Larissa, a Merry Dim Sum Christmas, a seasonal greeting to do the kind of dim sum diplomacy that they were talking about just now. So let's run that clip. Take care, everybody. We will see you again soon. We hope to see you at our Chinese Community Center in Madison Heights. We hope that you have a happy holiday season, a happy new year, and that you stay safe and healthy. Take care.
Have yourself a merry dim sum Christmas.
Chicken feet's delight.
From now on, only dim sum will be in your sight. Have yourself some sticky rice and spare ribs.
More than tots, I pray.
Lobaco, egg rolls, and siumai are on the
that are dear to us. Card passes by too fast once more. Dim sum brings our families together.